Thank you, Bert. We do have some time now if people have questions to follow up while Bert is with us.
Bert, great presentation. I wonder if you would give an example of a situation where contextual factors made it difficult to interpret the data you collected, because that's a little bit theoretical. What's a concrete example of something you've run into like that?
Well, so an example of that is where we ask a question, and you're familiar with this example, so it's a, but where there was a question that was asked and there were answer choices that were given, and it was a misunderstanding really of what those answer choices meant. And so it was sort of a highly contextualized thing, but that went awry because the people didn't really understand what the question and the answers choices that they were given to answer it. And so if you don't know, I mean, if they're names for things, really is what this involved. If they're names for things that are specific to a certain situation, and you give the names that are from your situation and they don't get translated right, or they don't get understood correctly, then people can be presented with choices that make no sense to them because they don't fit their context. And another example would be not knowing the leadership structure somewhere. If you don't understand the leadership structure, you might be asking questions of the wrong people. So if you want to find out what's really happening somewhere, there might be people who are nominally the leaders, and then the people who are the actually real people of power. And if you don't understand who those real people of power are, you could be getting part of the story, but not the whole story.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
John Hurst?
Yes, thank you, Bert, for your presentation. Quick question. Have you any examples of good informed consent forums, or have you seen places where maybe there's some really good examples of that, or some that you think are worthy of kind of highlighting or spotlighting?
I can't speak to specific informed consent forums. I know that there are many, if you do an internet search of informed consent, you'll come up with many, for example, universities that do studies using human subjects, and they'll have informed consent forms that can be used as templates. It really depends. In an academic setting, like I said, it's absolutely vital that informed consent be filled out. In a mission setting, there's a sense in which, depending on the type of thing, like if you're doing inside work with the churches, you might or might not consider, the church leaders might or might not consider it necessary. If it's with the wider community, people might want to know, why are you asking me these questions? And you'll have to come up with a study that we're, studying the culture, the context of people in this area. And, you have to have a reason for the study and for the informed consent. And so you might have to be a little creative in that. And that I'm not as familiar with forums, that are mission specific.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our studies haven't involved the need for informed consent forums, but it's something that always bears looking at.
Great. John Mayer?
Hey, Bert, thank you very much. I just wondered, I think you alluded to it, but maybe say a few more words about like field testing, the research questions, a survey before you take it to a mass group. Many people skip this step. They spend a lot of time creating the questions, whatever. They don't field test them, and people don't fill it out right. They don't understand what you're asking, or even realizing how long it's going to take. You want to
yes.
a sense of how long it's going to take, and
Yes.
asking even certain questions first versus later.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, field testing is, because you can have what you think is a good translation, again, of the form, and people are given it, or people are asked the questions and they have no idea what you really, or they answer a different question. And so it does bear testing them out on a test group. And like you said, people will only spend so much time. I read one statistic that said basically people will spend 10 minutes on a survey, whether they're 10 questions or 50 questions. And so if you want them to answer with thought and not just rushing through it or giving up, you might have to decide what are my most important questions here. And those are the ones that I'll either limit it to or put at the top. So yeah, good question there.
Thank you. Yes. Daniel, since you've asked one already and we're a little short on time, I'm going to go to Dana. And if we have time, Daniel, I'll get back to you. Dana?
Yeah, just briefly, Bert, can you talk to us about research with oral cultures where a great deal of learning and wisdom is out there, but our instruments, typical Western instruments, are not as useful, perhaps either in the qualitative storytelling frame or some other ways that we could sharpen learning through in oral cultures. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's where having the data gatherers trained in listening techniques, trained in how to ask questions that follow up on what's said. So, tell me more about this, or what do you mean by this, or how did that come about? So that they can seize on things that are said. And
I'm
really
thinking about things like oral history interviews, or some of those kinds of techniques that have been used in non-Western cultures, or even in with older elderly people in society, where they're recounting in a memoir kind of way.
Oh yeah.
Histories. There's a number of those kinds of tools that I think we don't usually have on our shelf as generally quantitative researchers. And I'm wondering if you had a couple comments for us, because you've done an awful lot of work with people in tribal and oral societies.
I think you're right. I think things like oral histories that tend to focus on the fewest people but get the most depth because they can talk for a long period of time. You have to consider, how are you going to record those? Or are you going to use a tape recorder basically, or some other recording device so you can capture everything and have it transcribed later? How are you going to have a separate person taking notes while you're the main interviewer the person interacts with, have an unobtrusive partner to capture information? But yeah, those can be excellent ways of gathering information, that because you don't, as the researcher, always know the questions to ask. The questions get revealed in the process of research. That's the beautiful thing about research, is research teaches you the questions you need to ask in the next round of research. So yeah, things like oral histories are wonderful ways to capture much more detail than you would otherwise.
Thank you.